Hi everybody. Yes, I'm coming this week with two videos. I wanted to get the second panel out to you all this week. I'm hoping next week I can do a little bit more on the marketing side and the business side of selling art because I think that's super important. So I'm going to try and do my best. This video is a little bit longer. I didn't use any high speed painting, so I just left it at regular speed. This is panel 2 that you're seeing here, and I am working most of what you see on the canvas right now is the underpainting of the piece that's hopefully going to be finished at some point. And underpainting is such an important process to whether you're doing landscape or abstract work. There, in the way that I work my pieces anyway, that I work almost like I am doing realism or landscape, that I do an underpainting. There are lots of abstract artists that can just go in and layer very heavy and very thick, more like an impasto style of painting. But I like to do those thin layers that really capture the light in between the layers, that make your painting look translucent in some areas. It adds, to me, I think it adds a little bit more depth to a painting and gives it more of that not so in your face contemporary modern art. It's a little bit softer and more landscapey, even though I am not a landscape painter. But I'm just trying to put that into context or some words for you so that you can have a little bit of an understanding of what my paintings look like. I know for some of you who have seen my art at a show, you probably can understand what I'm trying to explain here. So this piece here on the left side, I didn't capture it. If you watch the video before this, or the video not before this, but the one where I was working both panels at the same time, I wasn't capturing that left side very well with those white squares, and I had just gone straight across. So in the original painting, it's not straight across. There's a little bit more life that's in that area, and so I had to jig that up a little bit. And I have to say, I can't believe how much I'm squinting my eyes. It's like you hit 50, even though I'm not quite 50, but your eyesight just goes to heck. It's like nasty. So I'm just going over with some white paint. Everything has medium mixed into it, and probably I'm using more so of a glazing medium right now. And I have two brands that I'm using. I'm intermixing them. So there's Liquitex glazing, and then there's golden glazing medium. It doesn't really matter. They both do the same thing. I think the reason I have two different brands on hand right now is just a matter of when I was starting to buy my supplies for this piece, that's when COVID hit. So it was just a matter of how many bottles could I get, and the fastest kind of way to, so it didn't really make a difference. So still working on that piece, and I hope that you realize in watching this video that I'm moving around the canvas. I do cut out a lot of parts where I'm standing back and visually seeing this piece as a whole, well, as 1/3 of a whole. So there is that in this painting, which I don't show you because I really don't think it's necessary for me to show you me standing there staring at my painting for an hour or a half an hour or 10 minutes. I think that's, it should be self-explanatory that there are periods that artists stand back and just observe their painting and see how it's developing and what areas are working, what areas are not working, color correction, all of that stuff. That all of that goes into creating an abstract painting or any painting. And I'm trying to think if maybe I can, well, while I'm working here, if we can talk a little bit about, or I can talk a little bit about the one of the questions that comes up in the comments a lot is, how do you know when an abstract painting is done? And, I think that takes time and experience. And it's really all about training your eye. Your eye, the more you do, the better that you're going to get. Like, I don't know how else can if you were, your eyesight and your ability to see things, the more you work at it, gets better over time. And I do a lot of squinting, and this is a trick that we do in when you're learning to draw, is you squint so you don't see those hard lines in the image that you're drawing. You see softer lines. And I started out as a drawer, so I take a lot of my experience from drawing and sketching and I apply it to how I paint. And so when I am squinting, there's certain things that I look for in a body of work, not a body of work, oh my goodness, that I look for in the painting that I'm working on, is that when I squint, other than the fact that my eyesight is going, what am I seeing? How does that image appear to me? Is there movement? Does my eye move around the painting? And does it move in the way that I want it to move? And how my eye would move through that painting would be determined on the colors that I use, the values of those colors, and then the composition and design. So there's a lot of factors that go into having your eye move around that painting. And if your eye doesn't move and get stuck in a certain area, then that means that area is not done yet. The other thing that would determine whether I think a painting is finished is when my eye moves around that painting, does it keep coming back to an area that irritates me? Sometimes I can let those little irritations go because I think it adds to the overall composition. I can be a bit of a perfectionist, so I've had to learn how to not perfect everything because when you're trying to paint loosely, it's not about perfection. It's about being able to lay down the composition in a way that's pleasing but not perfect. I don't know. I hope that explains it a little better. So sometimes I'll just let a painting sit for a couple of days, and in those days I'll keep studying it and seeing how my eye feels when I look at it. There's always a sort of like a visceral reaction that I have to my paintings, and the better I get and the more work that I do and the longer that I'm in this profession, my eye and my gut, that visceral feeling I feel, is really what tells me if a painting is finished or not. Sometimes I can instantly stand back from a piece of work and say, yep, nailed it, yes. And then, because you guys, I'm sure, can imagine, that's when we do our little happy dance in the studio. And then there's other times where I think I nailed it, and then I look the next day and I'm like, what was I thinking? So there's all of those periods that come in. There's no science to say as to how a piece is finished. It's really about experience and getting to know your style, getting to know your work, getting to know yourself as an artist. And so it will get easier the more you do. As with anything, the better you'll get, the better your eye is going to be trained to see those little imperfections that you can improve upon. So that's my tiny little, I'm not going to be able to say that word in the morning, explanation. It's like saying espresso. Okay, let's talk a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to talk for this whole time. This is a little bit of a longer video, but chances are I probably will talk because I don't feel like digging for music to try and find something. So whitewashing, as you can see here, even though it's white, there is a lot of work that goes into a white background. I can't express this enough. Your white will make or break a painting, and you can't just go in with white paint. That's just not how a painting is done. And there are a few people that have commented throughout, and I know they're not people that follow me, so it doesn't really bother me. But they have no concept of how a painting is created. And they'll just look at all of the underpainting and say, well, that I'm not an artist and I don't know what I'm doing. But as soon as I read a comment like that, I know that they don't know what they're talking about, because a good painting has an underpainting. There's no way that you can go into an abstract painting and create the amount of depth and see how I'm such a clapper. Okay, so I left that little part in for your little morning jig. You can't just go into a painting, like, even though I know what the composition looks like, I can't just go in and paint what I see. I have to build up more of that painting, more of that color, and then slowly chip away at it so that you get all of those little hints of different colors that are in there. And you can tell if they were forced and put into that area, because the layering process is going to be skewed. It's not going to be the proper order. So you have to slowly build the painting up. And if you think in terms of a painting as 3D instead of 2D, I don't know if that helps visualize that a little bit better for you, but that's how you should envision your paintings, as 3D. Even though they're 2D and they're flat, your color, the way you build it, should elevate. And that's how you'll get all of these beautiful little layers of depth and color and lightness and washes and, thicker parts. It should all be different. Nothing should be the same from the start of a painting to the finish of a painting. Your strokes should be unique. Your thickness of paint should be unique. And by unique, I mean varied, different consistencies. All of that stuff really takes your work to a whole new level. And that takes time. We have when we're first learning to paint, working those paints can be very frustrating, because there's a lack of understanding of how to manipulate the paint to get the image that you're looking for. And I think at some point, probably in the next year, if you can bear with me for that length of time, or maybe even 6 months, half a year, is I want to start showing some snippets of, what's it called? Examples of what I'm talking about, instead of just talking about it. I'm a visual person, and so it's hard for me to just talk about things. I'd rather show you. And I don't really want to show you how I paint my work, but I want to show you the different styles of brush strokes and techniques that I think you can use to amplify your work, or to gain a knowledge and an understanding of how to manipulate acrylic paint, and do tests with the different mediums so that you get an understanding more so visually about how to work acrylic paint. And acrylic paint can be brutal. Like, it can be very, very frustrating. If it's not the medium for you, I tell you, you could lose your mind with this stuff. And there are days that I still wake up and it's like I've never painted before in my life. So if you saw that, what I was just doing there, that kind of greeny gray wash over top of that underpainting, that is impossible to get on a flat surface, like with one layer. You cannot get that that look in a painting. It has to be layered. And so it's almost like deconstructing a painting. If you can look at a painting, the next time you go to a museum when this COVID situation ends, I want you to start practicing looking at artwork. When you're in person, it helps. You can do it, on your computer through images and stuff like that, but it's not going to give you that true image, because nothing beats being in person. But I want you to start looking at artwork and trying to deconstruct it in your head to see if you can see the layers or have a guess at what the layers were to get to that final image. I think that that's an important exercise that you should all be doing if you're just learning how to paint, is try and interpret what those layers are. And that will hopefully help your brain to start to understand that, or not understand, but to be able to see those images so that you can enhance your own work again. That's my little tip for the morning. I don't know if I have anything left, so let's just talk about the painting. I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. I got 15 minutes to go. This is a very long, because you guys don't like this high-speed painting, so now I'm stuck talking all this time. I hate the sound of my voice. Okay, so here again, I'm dancing. I have some serious good music on the day that I was painting this. Don't ask me what it was. I have no clue. Sometimes it's just what YouTube music sends to me because it's starting to get to know what my preference is. Or sometimes it's really, it's a specific music list that I made that month. But I don't know at the time that I was dancing what song that is. But I love music. So here I am just enhancing some areas. Again, I'm starting to layer over that blue so that it's not so blue. You know, when we look at the grass and we look at the sky, it's not just one color. You know, there's a whole bunch of different shades and different shades, different hues that make up that one color that we see with our eye. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So that darker blue, I'm overlaying with some other blue. And I'm not doing it perfectly. If you can see how I just did that wash over top, I'm leaving some of the bits of the underneath to shine through. That's the whole point of underpainting, is each layer just adds more depth and volume to the piece. And again, if that was a 3D model, it would be raised. You know, you could see, I'm such a visual person. So as soon as I start saying that, I just see the layers, how they lay on top of each other, and they're not flat. I tell you, I can't express how excited I am to get this painting finished so that I can have it leave my studio and have my space back. It certainly has been an honor and a thrill to paint something this large, but you really need the space. And truthfully, I don't know. I don't have the space. I don't know how many artists actually do have the space for an 18-foot piece. I will say in a year's time, hopefully I will have the space to paint something this large after I build my art studio, which I'm so excited about. But I'll leave that. We don't need to talk about that. Okay, so again, I'm still overlaying with color because that's what I do. I'm a painter. I'm examining it. I'm checking my photo reference to see. And this really, you know, this color that I'm throwing on right now, there was one comment I got that, and I'm assuming it was a male. No offense, but I think he made some reference comments that I assumed he was male. He made mention about the fact that I wasn't even looking at my painting while I was painting it. And I mean, when we drive a car, isn't there times that we take our eyes off the road for a second? Like, it doesn't mean we crash in an instant. So there are sometimes things that I can do. It's just about laying the color down. It's really, it doesn't really matter where it goes at that moment. Like, as long as it's in the vicinity or the area of where I need it to be, that's really all that matters for me. So if I'm looking at my reference photo and painting at the same time, that's just comes with experience and skill and years of doing this. Again, I'm overlaying that color to lighten that up. This area gave me some grief. I have to say, it's like I couldn't understand, even though I could visually see the piece, I couldn't get that swooping down motion to go in the right direction. I was laughing at myself going, why can't I see this? So I actually had to take some time to just really draw that out step by step just to get that arc right. Sometimes our brains can't really interpret what we're seeing. and it just wants you to do something else. And I ended up, that large square on the right side of the screen, that big blue square, I actually end up taking that out, which is really unfortunate, but the I think the clients were really, oh goodness me. I think the clients were really wanting a much more similar composition to the original. And so that wasn't in the original. It was an addition that I thought that this large structure might need, and just because, you know, I amplified the size, or I multiplied the size and made it quite larger. And so when I finally saw the two pieces together, like 1 and 2 on top of each other, I realized that I probably didn't need it. It looked fine the way it was, the original version. And so I ended up taking it out. I did leave a hint of it in the background though, like the remnants of it is still there, but it wasn't really necessary. Okay, pretty sure I thought I took out all the dancing, but I guess not. This was a really good soundtrack, and I tell you, I had to really do some editing to get some of these dance moves out because it was a bit. Okay, so yeah, it was like that pretty much every time I wasn't painting. Oh goodness. So here again, I'm still trying to lay that paint over. And if you notice, I did have those big stain brushes. If you saw that when I was working them earlier on in the previous videos, but I opted to use the regular size brush just so that I think, like, when you're working a larger area and you're doing washes and things like that, it's fine to use the large brush to apply and cover the surface a little bit more quickly. But I think as you start to dwindle down and work a little bit more detailed area, it makes sense that your brush size would adjust to that as well, right? So the larger the space, the earlier on in the composition, you would use a larger brush. And then as you work your way down, getting to the more detailed area, you're going to adjust and you'll use smaller and smaller brushes. And so that's why in this one here, you can see that I'm just using this. It's the larger of the flat brushes that I use. And there was a few times I said to myself, why am I using this little brush? This is taking forever. And I kind of fast forwarded there a little bit because I was getting a little bored of myself watching all of these tiny washes come on. But you can kind of see, you know, it's just a matter of playing with it, tinkering with it, changing this, making this lighter, making a little bit more darker on this side. I mean, you're constantly adjusting, taking away, putting back, taking away, putting back. And each one of those layers, is so, I can't express this enough. They are important to the overall end piece. They all matter. Each layer, each little dab of paint that you put onto the canvas makes a difference. So you can see there, I was just kind of mapping it out. Where am I supposed to be? I don't know if any of you have ever played badminton, but that's what the one trick I learned is, you know, when that bird's coming up at you, is point and then slam it. It's about identifying your target and then executing. So that's kind of what I still do, is I point at certain things. So you can see me pointing right there. And then somehow I'm able to translate that to the canvas that I'm working on. It's a thing that I've done for years. So I don't know if that's a thing, a real thing. I don't know if anybody else does it. If you do, I'd love to know. We are almost at the end. 6 more minutes to go. And you know I'm doing the happy dance right now. I love this. Canvas number 2 in the series, I have to say, is probably my favorite. This could be a painting all on its own once it's finished, obviously not right here. But there's just some really cool soft elements to it. And even though I do think like panel 3 is going to be the most important part, and that's the one that's probably stressing me out the most to finish, because it's eye level, right? That's the one that people are going to walk up to and see in person, because the other two are going to be too high up. You know, it'll be 6 feet and up, 6 feet and 12 feet. And so it's just, I have to, the reason I haven't tackled it yet, it's still sitting there. I haven't really done this. Well, I've done this stage to it, but it's not the stage that I need it to be at. But I'm just letting it sit there until I can feel within myself that I have the strength to tackle Canvas 3. And it's got a lot of serious, intricate washes that are really important to the overall composition of the painting. And so I'm not quite there ready mentally and physically to get that third panel done. So it might be just marketing tips for a little while, because I don't have any painting videos other than, I think this is the last one. No, I have maybe one more. But I do have to get myself motivated and in that mind frame to get panel 3 done, because I think the plan is hopefully to have these installed at the end of March. And so I kind of have to get my butt in gear and get going. So much to do in so little time. I don't understand how this happened. So again, I'm overlaying with some more, it's almost like a gray brown color. I think it's some black mixed with cadmium orange. Potentially some green is added in there, and maybe some blue. Like, I use a lot of colors in my colors, and they all harmonize with each other. Maybe one day I'll do a video on harmonizing colors so that you understand what I mean. And so again, you know, even though this is I've just covered up everything that you saw, everything still matters. It's still important. It's still necessary to have. Like, all of those drips are going to have, you know, ridges and bumps that are going to add to the texture of this piece. And without doing the underneath stuff, it's just a boring painting. And so, and then when I overlay this color, I don't just leave that color. Again, I'm going to go and I'm going to add some more stuff to that. So this area here looks horrible, but it's necessary. And in the overall composition, I knew I needed some darker areas, because there is some spray bombs, which is spray cans. It's a nickname for spray paint. There are some areas that I need to have that darker undertone. So I went back in and added that in. And so now you can see here where I'm starting to change that overall darkness, right? I'm starting to add some differences to it, because it's the differences that make things unique. So it's the same color, I've just added some more lighter tone to it. So I guess I've changed the value of that color. And you can see how I'm still adding that. And now it's kind of like coming alive, right? Can you see how that changes it? And if you saw that in 3D, it would be raised. So it's not so flat. It's got dark areas, and this is the best that I know everybody loves, the drips. And I leave it here. This is kind of almost the end of the video. All of these drips, really, you're not going to see a whole heck of a lot in the final piece. But again, I don't know where I'm going to need a drip, so I just add the drips. And then I start to lay the composition over top of those drips, where I leave some of them showing and I cover some up, which just really can show the buyer and the viewer, whoever's looking at this painting, that this painting was created with multiple layers. And it adds so much interesting elements to a painting. And I was really having fun making my drips, listening and jamming out to some music. So excuse me while I do that, because I like dancing. So everyone, thank you so much for staying with me, and I will see you all soon.